All right, this week we're going to go into a fair amount of depth in attributes. And here I've loaded up the Humboldt County parcels layer because it's a good one to play with attributes. And I've opened up the attribute table. If you've used ArcMap a fair bit, you're going to find ArcGIS Pro is a little different. It has the same features, but the user interface is very different for attributes. Here we can see a bunch of different types of attributes. It has a shape. This isn't really an attribute we work with. It's just a column that shows we've got polygons. You can select things over here. The FID is a feature ID that's used internally to Esri. We really don't play with it. But the rest of these we can actually modify. In fact, you can literally go in here and double click and change like the appraisal parcel number, which we probably don't want to do. Okay, and also notice we've got a couple parcel numbers here. You might think these were a number type, but in reality, if you go to fields, you will see that a lot of times you will see numbers that are represented in text. Now the reason for that is if you put it into a number, especially a floating point number, it might get converted into something else, and that would be a problem. Oh, I was playing with my Klamath data. We'll go to that in a sec. So sometimes you do put numbers into a text field because it won't change it. You can't do a calculation or anything on it. So it's a little bit more stable. Even these that look like big integer numbers. Area, on the other hand, it's going to be a double, which we always want anything we're doing calculations on, or almost anything we're doing calculations on, to be a double. And notice there aren't a lot of longs. That's fairly typical. We would use longs if we were counting something. So a number of trees found in a plot would be a long. That would be better than a double because we don't want to have fractional trees. And then we also have dates. So geometry and object IDs we won't really work with. They're internal to Arc. But text, double, dates, and longs we will work with, especially text and doubles. As with this data set, we use them all the time. Okay, so let's take a look at some of this. Now, one of the main things we like to do is we like to use attributes to filter our data sets, as we've already done. We can go up to select by attributes, and I want to work with my parcels data, and I want to do a new expression. And let's say we are looking for some rural parcels. So we might want to go ahead and go to where descript.io is equal to rural. And as we start typing, Arc will go ahead and try to help us complete this because it actually puts the entire list of options in there. But notice there's a number of different rural ones, and you could pick it here and then run, but we might not want just the timber rural. We might want all rural. Well, in that case, you could just do rural and then say contains the text rural. Now, if you've worked with the GIS package before, you may have heard us talk about using SQL. ArcGIS is not a relational database, but it has a SQL engine within it. And SQL stands for Structured Query Language. It's a database thing. And there's the SQL. In other words, this little editor, which I like, and I think it's going to make it a lot easier to learn this stuff, you can actually flip over and see the SQL. And this editor is helping us to write SQL. So I like that a lot. And notice there's a fair number of options. Now, these are all string-based. So if we go in and we now pick an area, the options we are going to have are going to change to be those that make sense with a number. Like we could find things that are greater than, is that 1 million? 10 million? Lost count of my zeros. Yep, that's 1 million. I think this is probably going to be square feet because this was in NAD 27 datum. So there's a lot of big parcels in Humboldt County, a lot of them that are over 1 million square feet. Run that again. Still quite a few over 10 million. Let's do 100 million. Okay, not many. In fact, looks like there aren't any. All right, so importantly, what you can do is you can do all kinds of different queries on your data, and then if you want to work with a subset of a shapefile, you'd then just go over here, right click, data, export features. Now I've got a new shapefile with the stuff that we want to work with. And notice, oh, here's acres. I should be using acres to make more sense. So let's find one that has acres greater than 10 acres. If we want to have a piece of property out in the country. Okay, there we go. Now you can also go down here and you can click on just show selected, and so you'll see a smaller number here, and you can also see how many items were selected. 16,000 out of 72,000 parcels in Humboldt County. We should get something bigger than that. Let's do 100 acres. Ooh, still a lot of property over 100 acres. How about 1,000 acres? Oh, not too many. Okay, and you can see these are being updated. Oh, look, public land. TPZ stands for Timber Planning Zone, I believe. Mixed redwood, so these are timberlands. Fun. Okay, now, oh, and there's Jerry Van Dolen's name. So we've played a little bit with both numbers and text. Let's take a look at dates. There's a last update field. And if we go over here, you will see that, oh, there's the last updated. Now, if we turn off selection, it's kind of fun. You find out that a lot of these were last updated in 1899. So old parcels, even down here, parcels have been around for a long while and haven't been updated. Let's go ahead and find those that have been updated since 2000. Whoops. Last update is 2000. Okay, I failed, and if you run this, you may get a really quick error message, or you can hit here for details. Invalid expression. Now, a lot of times these error messages don't really help a whole lot, but notice there's this little calendar over here. Well, that's going to help us to figure out what the date format is that it wants. Okay, there's the date format it wants. So I didn't give it that format. I'm going to do that, and now I can just edit this little date thing. This little calendar works fine if they're recent dates, but if they're way in the past, you can change the year and then go over here, and then you can pick what you'd like if I want to do January 1st, 2000, or the start of 2000. Whoops. There it is. And now we've got January 1st, 2000, so those are all the parcels that are updated since then, which is most of them. Yep, must just be those at the top that are 1899. Okay, so that's dates, numbers, and strings or text. Now, if we wanted to add and remove fields, I'm going to go ahead and go to the attribute table for the Klamath River layer. It's a little bit simpler, and it's one I created, so I can play around with it more. We go ahead and can say add field. And now we can put in a field name. Remember to make sure that your field name is unique. And then we set it to text. Now text can only be, oh, I should have mentioned, field names can only be 10 characters long. It's an ARC limitation. Shapefiles are based on the old dbase format, which allow field names longer than that. I don't know why they're limited to 10. They always have been. So sometimes you have to figure out, like here they do shape lang. And that's why they can only do 10 characters. Text can only be 255 characters long. There's the length. And then we can either hit return or just click on new field, and then we can do a double. Make sure always to set the data type, otherwise you will be unhappy. I'm going to go ahead and do a long, and then I'll do a date. Okay. So there's our basic data types. Now up here, notice we've got save, and we do want to click save before we go and do anything else. I don't know why save is still solid, but we'll go ahead and close that, and close it as a way to make sure that all of our changes were taken. And there's our fields. Now this gets a little bit tricky, I think. In order to make this wider, you've got to click on the right side of the column and push it to the right. It's a little bit unintuitive, but it does work. Now, take a look. Our text fields are blank by default. Okay, and you can just type in them, which is very cool, easier than an ARC map. Okay, now while we're doing this, we are editing our shapefile, so we do need to save periodically or we will lose those changes. Similarly with doubles, can't type text in it, but you can type numbers, and you can do fractional numbers. Longs, you can do numbers, but you can't do fractions. Now notice the date says null. Now that's a database thing. Null means nothing. There's nothing there. Kind of like a blank in text, but it really means that it's just empty. And so now for dates, they have to be a specific format. So again, this calendar tool is very handy to make sure you put it in the right format. And they happen to be using the US format of month, day, and then year. So that's handy. Okay, so that's how we add and edit attributes. And as we've already done, you can go ahead and calculate field and calculate geometry, or sorry, calculate geometry. We've done that. I will do a little bit of calculate field now. Okay, so calculate field is a fairly sophisticated editor that I will just touch on right now that lets you set fields to be certain values. In other words, I can go ahead and take my double field here and I can set that equal to 12. Boom, it's 12. I can set it to 12 times 10. Okay. More importantly, I can take other fields, like here's my length field for my river segments, and those are in kilometers. Well, what if I wanted to get those in meters? I could set my double to field equal to length kilometers. Now notice the format's a little strange. In fact, I'm going to delete that just to make sure I do it correctly. There we go. Times 1,000. Okay. And now we have a double to field where we have our length in meters. And I should, of course, change the name of it, but we're just playing around right now. So there's a whole calculation capability in here. In fact, you'll see there's a bunch of mathematical functions over here. There's your basic mathematical operations. And up here, you've got an expression type. Now, it's set by default to Python 3. I recommend using that and taking my class. And you can actually type whole Python snippets into this code block to set your attribute values.